The synopsis had me at Man from the Future. I only recently became aware of this movie, Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, by a comment left on one of my videos from a longtime subscriber to my channel telling me about this movie that stars Sam Rockwell, Zazie Beetz, and Michael Peña. And I found out it's about a man from the future who comes to this diner to warn people there or to gather people up to help him accomplish this mission that he needs to do in order to stop AI from becoming this crazy out of control entity that destroys the world. In some ways, this movie feels kind of like a spiritual cousin to Terminator or T2. It's not really an imitator, but I was thinking of these themes while I'm watching this movie because the two are very much connected in that regard. I did go in mostly blind. All I knew was the basic synopsis, which I've just told you about, and I saw the picture on the poster, which you will be seeing in my video because I put posters up of the movies I'm talking about. And Sam Rockwell looks like this zany homeless man. He's like looks like this big wonky raincoat with tubes all over the place and electric circuitry on his chest and this crazy hat. And he just looks like an insane person. He looks like a hobo, and people can't take him seriously at first, but he quickly, or for the audience, he quickly demonstrates that, okay, maybe something really is going on. Like maybe he really is not some crazy person and he's truly from the future and has been sent back to try to stop this event from happening. And the particular turning point of this event is that night. So he's only got a few hours in order to accomplish his goal. And while Terminator took a very serious approach to this subject matter, this film takes more of a satirical black comedy approach to it. So it's not, it is serious-minded as far as the messaging goes. There are multiple times where it is highlighting the issues with a lot of things that are going on today in society with our addiction to and or dependence on phones. Like, okay, phones can be great tools, but there are a lot of people that are just constantly on them. And I don't mean on them in the use of business or whatever, correspondence, apps that help with your productivity. I'm talking about, like the TikTok type generation. That's definitely highlighted in this movie, like how brain dead that makes you. And degrading your attention span. And while it's comedic, that doesn't really undercut the seriousness of the message. It does hammer that message home quite a bit. You do I started to feel like, I was being hit over the head with what was already very obvious to me. If you didn't get it, bang, this is what's wrong. That sort of thing. It was still fun and I enjoyed this film quite a bit. I don't have a ton of negative things to say about it, and I appreciated that it's a cautionary tale disguised as something quirky and fun. It's not just a comedy. There's this other element attached to it that kind of makes you think about things. Well, things that many of us are already aware of anyway. And this is just kind of a fun journey towards demonstrating, granted in a hyperbolic manner, just how troublesome some of these things of today are. You'll probably know what I'm talking about when you watch it. I don't want to give away too much of the plot, specifically beyond what we already know from the synopsis. This was directed by Gore Verbinski, who did The Ring and the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. He also did Rango. So he's got a very visual style and flair, and that is also apparent here, despite the fact that, like I said, it's hit you over the head multiple times with its condemnation of things like obsessive use of social media, selfie culture, TikTok obsession, things like that, phone addiction. I did appreciate that it was highlighting this as a problem. because it definitely is, especially with the younger generation. We all know what I'm talking about. And it's exaggerated to the point that there are groups of people in here, they're specific, let's say specifically high school kids or, school age kids that are behaving like zombies. They're glued to their phones, and as far as the adults and the problems going on with adults, they are very desensitized to certain violence that has been happening, and there's commercialization of everything, and there's this loss of human connection that's happening. And there's a quote that Rockwell's character, pretty sure it was his character that said this, that I really appreciated. He said, "Progress is only progress if it actually makes things better." And a lot of times, things that are labeled as being progress or progressive aren't really. That's why I appreciated a quote like that, because it's kind of something that's in my head already. As far as the characters in here, Sam Rockwell's character, initially he comes off as very unhinged, but then you realize, or he makes it clear to you, that this is not his first rodeo. In those time travel or time loop sort of stories that we're familiar with, by X amount of times this person has done this thing, they just get bored of all of the stuff that they already know is going to happen. But then eventually you see his purpose and the tragedy behind his purpose. And most of the characters has a believable reason for going along with him. We get flashbacks that provide emotional context and backstory for some of these characters. There were multiple other things that I liked about this. Cool ways in which certain things were framed. There's this one particular shot I'm thinking of where the camera is like positioned back here, sort of to the side and behind the character that is closest to the camera, and the camera's looking through their glasses, and on the other side you can see who they're looking at. And the way that was put together was kind of cool to me. I mean, it's not anything super groundbreaking, but I just thought it was an interesting way that we saw this image. I like the quirkiness of the situation. I liked the group of people that joined him on this mission and his interaction with them. I liked also how that there were at certain moments very unexpected twists and turns that happened that subverted my expectation about what was going on. So I didn't really have a firm grasp on what was going to end up happening. And the subversions of my expectation that happened weren't things that made me wonder what the heck is going on and why, and makes no sense. I understood it. I was glad that it was something that kind of took me by surprise. There were strong performances across the board, and the satire, of course, that I've already talked about that, kind of cuts maybe a little bit uncomfortably close to reality for some people, and the very clear cautionary message about AI, tech dependence, and basically cultural rot. So, it is a warning to us. We need to be careful about these sorts of things. There were a couple of things that I had a little bit of an issue with that didn't really track for me narratively. There's a character who is affected by certain things if they're around them too much or too close, but that wasn't always consistent. Once you find out about this person's issue, there were times that I realized that they were close to this stuff and weren't demonstrating this problem. So that didn't seem to be consistent. It wasn't anything major. I think there were maybe only one or two moments that stood out to me as like, well, how come they didn't have this reaction in these couple of scenes here? That's minor, honestly. Another thing was there's a reveal that happens about one of the characters that, even though I already said my expectations were subverted about certain things, this particular thing, I figured it out right away. Maybe you're kind of supposed to easily and quickly figure it out, but it seemed to me that they were trying to keep that hidden from you until a certain point in time. But as soon as someone started talking about their history, I knew right away what this was. Again, that's a minor complaint. Another one I had was at the end when things are going down, there is some extreme time dilation going on during this kind of a countdown moment. And this is something that often happens, but it seemed extremely noticeable in this particular scene. It stretched credibility a little bit too much for me. Now, I know obviously this entire movie kind of stretches credibility, still a minor complaint. The only other complaint I can think of, and all of these honestly aren't that big of a deal. They're not really enough to downgrade this film hugely for me. But the only other thing that I think I can say about it as far as anything in the con territory is the film's a bit lengthy, and you do start feeling it by the time you get to the end. I'm not going to say I was bored, because I wasn't, but I did notice that it was something that was taking a bit of time. The runtime is listed at 2 hours and 13 minutes. Obviously, credits are going to take some time off of the end there, but it's definitely a solid 2 hours and some change. And it feels like that maybe it would have benefited a little bit from some tightening up in certain places, just to kind of make things a little bit leaner. Not much, because there's quite a bit of stuff that's going on in this story, but it was definitely something that was constructed in such a way that I could tell that it was pretty substantial amount of time that this film was going on. I watched it in 2 nights, so it wasn't the same experience as sitting in the theater for the whole time. So I don't know if maybe me splitting it up made it feel like it was longer than it might really feel on a rewatch. This might be something that's a complete non-issue whenever I watch it again. At any rate, I generally enjoyed this film quite a bit and do recommend it if you like time travel stories mixed with comedic elements and quirky characters. The characters were a lot of fun to watch and see what sort of trouble they were going to get into as they went on their adventure with crazy old Sam Rockwell. So if you like sci-fi with some not so subtle messaging and quirky characters and crazy adventures and some good acting across the board, then I think this is worth checking out. It's going to be coming out in February. Cannot remember the actual release date. Maybe early February or early to mid-February. I'll put the date in the video when I'm editing it. But for now, that's all I have to say about Good Luck. Have fun. Don't die. If you guys check it out, let me know what you think, whether it landed for you or didn't, or was somewhere in between. Okay, that's it for now, you guys. Bye.